This episode was recorded on February 9th, 2025. Welcome to Muckrakers, where we dig through the latest happenings around so-called AI. In each episode, we highlight recent events, contextualize the most important ones, and try to separate muck from meaning. I'm your host, Jacob Hames, and joining me is my co-host, Igor Kravchuk.
Thanks, Jacob. This episode is a bit of a shorter one because the full impact of DeepSeek R1 hitting is still unfolding. We'll briefly touch the most important beats that we think you should be tracking right now, but we'll be going deeper onto all of them in the next episode.
Yeah, so DeepSeek dropped, and that was, January 20th? And then it seemed to hit the mainstream media on the 27th. What's the immediate, big takeaway here?
I'd say like the biggest takeaway is 600 billions in stock value vanishing as people reevaluate whether or not we really need all of that NVIDIA compute. But that is partially driven by the fact that the Chinese and like DeepSeek's Chinese engineers basically made Silicon Valley aware that they're not in fact the only smart people on Earth. And they did that by doing a bunch of very clever engineering tricks that allowed them to, at least as initially claimed, get GPT-4 and O1 level performance with much, much less compute.
Yeah, and these are actually pretty interesting as well. Like, they're actually meaningful engineering advances. It seems that frontier labs are trying to replicate and implement these kinds of new methodologies or techniques that have been proposed. And that's sort of not up for debate, right? Like, that stuff has been replicated, at least to some extent, externally.
Yeah, like the Unsloth guys immediately put it into their like fine-tuned kernels, and it like does give a massive speed up. People have been running like the training recipe within like a day. They replicated the aha moment and the R10 thing. So like a lot of engineering stuff is not up for debate. That's clear. And there's like leaked or like a rumor mill evidence that like Meta in particular is scrambling and has like war rooms in order to go like, how the fuck did we miss this? Why didn't we do this? And trying to incorporate this stuff into the Yama series as fast as possible. So the engineering is not up for debate.
What it also tells me, I think, is that people were waiting for the other shoe to drop. Or for people who don't know that particular term or phrase, people were jumpy. As soon as something happened and AI stuff looked like maybe it's not exactly what we thought it was, stock plummeted, right? So everyone sort of just like dropped it and ran. And we don't know if it'll go back up to where it was or not. But I think one of the more important takeaways there is that people were really jumpy and ready for this to be like a really big thing.
It was a big shock. There's an expression that people use. So like everybody knows the bubble, but people who follow finance a bit, they also know the expression like frothy markets. So, you know, when there's like lots of little bubbles and you can't really tell if it's just a single big bubble or it's just like normal stuff and like if it pops a little bit. Like you can't tell. That's the whole point of a power law. And we don't know whether we're in a bubble. I mean, I think we are, but like we don't know if I'm being objective.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a frothy market, and this kind of showed what you said, like the jumpiness and the uncertainty people have.
I hate
also
that term. I just
Sorry?
want to put out there, frothy market sounds kind of gross.
I mean, there's just like foam, you know, like
yeah, I get what you're going for, but just like the term for, I don't know, it.
Your language has the word moist, which apparently gives people the creeps as well. So like,
I mean, it's not like I actually have a problem with it. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't describe a market as frothy. Meh.
Do you know who has a problem though, but not with the market, but with the idea of giving the Chinese even more GPUs?
Right. Oh, Dario also made a blog post about that, right? He was like, "Hey, we should stop giving them GPUs because
it will help them even more." So like I think I can't remember the exact timeline, but there was already like the executive order to like restrict GPU export. I think might have been one of the last things that Biden did even, or one of the first things that Trump did.
So there was one a while ago, right? But you're talking about a more recent one.
I'm unsure. Like there was one that made Switzerland like a tier 2 country because they're not like good enough friends with the US to get like all the
Yes,
GPU
so I
goodness.
believe that was one of the last executive orders Biden did, but I could be wrong there. Um, and the one that I was referring to was about a year and a half ago, I believe, when they restricted uh, A100s or
It was like the big
H100s.
one that also was like there with the CHIPS Act, right? Like the one that actually
Yes.
kind of like put some things, yeah. So basically, Dario wrote a blog post where he said, amongst other things, people are spreading fake news about how they trained Sonnet. But he also says basically we need more export controls now because yes, it doesn't stop it, but it's like a mitigation or like a delaying factor. That like if they can do this with this many GPUs, if they get less GPUs, it's gonna slow them down a bit, and then like we have a chance to like outcompete them more reliably. Whereas if they just get GPUs, it's like they have smart people, as we can demonstrably see now, even if you're the most jingoist American. And from the perspective of the US, if they want to keep the lead for sure, they need to kind of like triple them a bit. And he kind of called for that.
He also was like, just to be clear, like we did it for pretty inexpensive too. Like it was kind of like a yeah, yours may be a little bit smaller, but like it isn't that much smaller than ours. Kind of thing going there.
Which is a new type of like size competition amongst CEOs, I guess.
Indeed.
But it leads us into a bit the last kind of cluster of topics we want to talk about. Oh, also, the US immediately had one guy calling for bans on import of R1 weights, which I'm not sure that will fly.
I don't know how they could even do that if they wanted to, honestly. Like practically, I don't think that is enforceable. But yeah, we're basically seeing, calls and roots of regulatory capture taking hold more strongly than we did before.
And geopolitical considerations as well, right? Like
Yes.
a lot of various versions of this, including just the fact that now the most popular chat app appears to be DeepSeek R1, also because it has a longer context window, and all of that stuff gets piped straight to China if you use the web app, which like comes with its own problems. And we'll talk more about that in the actual episode. But the other thing that factors into is like, Dario said, "Oh, if you, I don't think they did it for 6 million. I think it must be more because you need to account for the test runs, the small scale experiments, the
couldn't
retrials."
Be that small, could it? Is basically what Dario's saying.
And he said like Sonnet was 25 million, and he also said, "Oh yeah, Opus didn't fail. We totally didn't train a bigger model and distill it," which like sure, like I with Dario, it's much less of a thing where like you need to aggressively discard his information. He's not like Sam, who like if he says something, you need to like randomize your reaction, otherwise it's being manipulated. But like the main point is that people don't trust what DeepSeek are saying, and that includes even like how they trained it. Because semi-analysis, dropped analysis, where I think, no, actually we know you have like 1.2 billion of capital expenditure on buying GPUs, and even your cluster costs like more than you claim it costs to train R1 to run. So no, you didn't. And then OpenAI is of course appalled by the fact that somebody would take their proprietary IP and train a model on it, which is what they're accusing DeepSeek of.
And like, honestly, to all of the people, I mean, they literally took everyone's data and then did that. And now they're like, oh, but we copyrighted our data. Meh. I literally could not give less of a shit, Sam Altman. Come fight me. That's all I have to say.
Technically, they're claiming terms of service violation, which, like, good luck enforcing that with Chinese companies. But Yeah, like I'm totally with you. Also, we have hard evidence now that Meta trained on copyrighted data as well, because they joked about it in now publicized court emails. So, like, yeah, like I think it's highly likely that they did this same thing. And yeah, like I have zero tears, but it does kind of like add to the uncertainty that everybody has around R1, because did they train on benchmark or did they not? Did they train on reasoning data instead of doing it via reinforcement learning? Now people have like started to like dig into R1 and the training recipe, and they find, oh, actually, you say there was an aha moment where it suddenly started to do reasoning in your pure RL ablation, but no, actually, even the base model, it sometimes says that. And then, like, what does this mean? Is it actually doing reasoning? Do we need to do RL at all? Because there's 2 papers came out in the last week where basically just take a small reasoning data set, like tiny, like 1,000 samples or 800 samples, and then they fine tune on that, and then they just hard code in whenever the model wants to end the thinking token. It does like the tag/thinking. They just take that out, put wait inside, and then they continue. And that seems to scale as well as doing the fine tuning and then distillation, while being like much cheaper. So it's really question mark on what is even happening. And we also have now some evidence that whatever is happening, it might just be that you have more vaguely relevant tokens in the context window, because sometimes the R1 text is just gibberish, but then you get the right answer, and if you remove a gibberish, you don't get it. So
yeah, so basically there's a lot of outstanding questions and uncertainty with this model, both because people don't trust them and also because technically it's complex and we haven't been able to dig into it. So even though it's open weights, not open source, although it is being called open source, and so I even made that fumble in our recording, and then we re-recorded it because it's not open source, it is open weights. But because of that, because it's open weights, it is easier to investigate, and we've gotten papers like this S1 simple test time scaling and some other ones that are digging into like what are the actual mechanisms behind how this system is behaving, or what kinds of things it's outputting. But we don't know yet, and so that's the large motivator for us putting out this short episode, which just gives a high overview of all these things that have happened around R1, DeepSeek R1 specifically. So when we publish this episode, we are going to make sure we cover all these things and go into a lot more detail on them. Also cover the things that haven't come out yet, because you know that there's going to be some more updates and some more technical investigation here. Other things that we're going to like talk about are the stonk uncertainty. So stonks went down. Are they going to go back up? Are they going to keep going down? What's the deal there? There's already been a data leakage with DeepSeek data, and there are issues with data privacy, like actual issues that are worth considering. So it's not all just, people pointing at China and saying, bad. There are actually some legitimate concerns there in terms of data privacy. And also, how good is it? Like, did they train on the benchmarks? Did they not train on the benchmarks? How good are the benchmarks? Are they actually reliable, or are they just sort of whatever? Like, things that we don't yet know, but we expect to within the next, or within the near future, we will make sure to include. Any last thoughts, Igor, before we head out?
Yeah, it's a bit of a depressing last thought, but we should also just mention that, like, please, Americans, do something against the fascist administrative coup that's happening in the country, and like do something. Like, as a German who's read his history, like, you guys need to also like read like they thought they were free, and like the Germans, and like just like draw the right inferences, because holy shit. On the AI side, we're gonna be seeing what happens in the next couple of days or weeks until we manage the full recording. But this one, I assume it's more time sensitive than anything else.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's all the muck that we have for you this week, and we will see you next time.